Hi, I'm Brian Tyler. I'm here with my co-composer Casey the Cat, and we're going to be talking movies, mummies, monsters, cars, music, and anything else? Oh, sure. Other stuff too.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for inviting me back to your amazing place and your amazing studio. It's
Sure.
great to catch up again.
You too.
So last time we did a really extensive interview and we kind of talked about your background and stuff like that. So I do, I do encourage people to go check out that interview because we talked about a lot of stuff. But I kind of want to touch back on your kind of upbringing and kind of how everything kind of got started. Growing up, you were part of, your film was around you all the time, wasn't it, when you were little? Because your grandfather...
Yeah.
He was an Oscar-winning
art director. Yeah.
Walter H. Tyler.
Yeah. Film has always been around. My life in the sense that I always loved films. My grandfather being an art director,
right.
He taught me how to use lenses and develop film and cut film and all that, and since I had a thing for music, I always found that I think it was the two things that entertained me the most as a kid. I mean, it was like music and movies, and so the fact is when I saw how these two things work together so well,
right?
Like with John Williams and E.T. and Raiders and Star Wars and all those, that was how I originally kind of got in the lane of, whoa, okay, this is combining the two things that I really love, music and movies. And since I had a knack for playing instruments and started writing music pretty early, I think it all just kind of made sense,
Was that always the plan to get into film composing, or did you have another career aspiration before that kind of clicked together?
There was really no other, I wanted to be involved with music,
right,
and I wanted to be involved with movies. And it did take a while for them to merge into one,
right,
to film composing specifically. But film music is what I listened to growing up. I had scores; that was my record collection. I had other things, but right, really the focus was Jerry Goldsmith and all that. And so, but at the same time, I shot little movies with my pals, and I would edit stuff and do little special effects and kind of, it was all like for 5 cents, like anything that I could take a firecracker and blow it up, it was a lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I would promise all the kids on my block, like, I'm gonna direct a movie now, I'm gonna cast all of you in it, and so, and they remember that, and they remind me of that still. But kind of, as time went, I really had a knack for writing, and music became such a big part of what I do that after a while it just became clear that this was, at least a lane of the horizon of what I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily think it would happen. But I idolized, if I could be conducting an orchestra, doing what John Williams does, basically.
Exactly.
So
what were the kind of the first jobs in the business that you had? Was it just assistant work? Were you just grabbing coffee? I mean, what were those first things that...
The first job I had in the industry, so you almost have to split it into two. The non-film industry, just music. I mean, I started doing gigs when I was like 12, and then I was playing on records in my teens, and I did tours, and I played with bands, and so I was kind of like pro, because I got paid for it. In both, like, I as a drummer, and then a keyboardist, and also I did DJing. I had turntables, and I kind of had a knack for that too. So all that was cool. I loved studying about orchestras and harmony and counterpoint. But that really wasn't a career. That was more like just something I was really interested in, and started to work with some orchestras, and I played in an orchestra as a percussionist. And so all of this kind of, had its, Casey, don't hit the camera stand. My cat is giving us...
She's just rubbing her scent on it.
She's boom. She just, now that's hers. She's marked it hers. So my first actual movie industry gig was, I was an intern for director Norman Jewison. And I was in school, and I just kind of tried to, she's gonna knock that over. I just tried to, get in good with him. First, I was just cleaning stuff and sweeping, but then I saw this big stack of scripts, and I said, "Hey, has coverage been done on this?" No, we get way too many scripts. So I started just reading script after script after script and doing coverage of it all. And and then when I got out of school, one of my first gigs was I went to Sony Music to work, but I mean, my first gig was literally construction. I had a wheelbarrow and I was tearing down drywall, so it really didn't relate. But I just wanted to get my foot. I was like, anything. I just want my foot in the door.
Right.
Give me a chance. Put me in, coach, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was that. That's where I started.
Right. So when you did start getting your gigs and you start composing on your own, as a young composer, kind of starting off. Is building a sound or a style, is that like something that is in your mind when you're setting up, I want Brian Tyler's sound to be this.
Yeah. At first, not so much. I mean, I think at first it was more a question of how do I make stuff sound filmic? How do I make stuff sound? I was so inspired by so many of my heroes, right? So it was both. It was kind of this blend of John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith and Alex North and Maurice Jarre and Trevor Jones and James Horner, and then kind of more of this hybrid vibe that was starting with Hans Zimmer, and he'd been going, Hans and then more electronic like Vangelis and Alan Howarth and John Carpenter, and then you combine this all with, I was really into Radiohead and Nine Inch Nails, and that was emerging at that time when I started scoring. So. You kind of, I had a thing for John Barry as well, his scores, and it was all over the map. But those influences, kind of, you put them in the stew, and I would deconstruct their pieces, and so I learned that way. But the sound of me, that people know as kind of my vibe, and there's certain things that it's weird. I do see when I lurk on message boards, I do see these terminology like the Tylerism. Yeah. And he favors this kind of mode or this kind of chord program, whatever it is.
Right.
These melodies, I tend to have really rhythmic melodies against. Anyway, all those things just emerged naturally as I kind of my version of trying to emulate others ended up really becoming a. So, this is hilarious. Okay, I'm gonna have to pick you up. Sorry. My version of emulating others ended up kind of morphing into who I am as a composer. Because what I love harmonically, if I hear a Holst piece or a Arvo Pärt piece, and I'm like, what is that harmony? That's so interesting. The fact that I love it means there's something in my brain that's already preconditioned to gravitate towards that. So when I started composing film music, inevitably the chords and harmonies that I like in other music, I now am going to use myself. And it's the combination of all my particular likes created my sound, I think.
I think so too. I think Richard Sherman said it the best. I talked to him about that somewhere too, and he says we're all sponges. We're just absorbing things, and we absorb everything and then regurgitate it out how we see it. And
how you do it. It's like it's funny. It's not on music, but there's a really interesting book that Stephen Hawking wrote. It's called On the Shoulders of Giants, and he's talking about how Einstein and all the different. Quantum physicians, all these people that came before him kind of set him up. So him and Kip Thorne, when they were working on things like black holes and trying to reconcile quantum mechanics with theory of relativity, all these things, he's like, I stand on the shoulder of the giants myself. Yeah. Now you have Lawrence Krauss and you have, Sean Carroll and all these other leaders in physics standing on the shoulders of Stephen Hawking and Kip Thorne, and it just keeps on going up. And it's like, it's really in any field you do find this kind of pyramiding effect.
Right,
you know?
right. And some of your early scores, you really kind of made a name for yourself doing horror scores kind of early on. And I mean, Versatility was an amazing one with Bill Paxton, and you did a bunch of kind of these really amazing horror scores. As a composer, how do you escape typecasting in this industry? Because I feel like a lot of composers get stuck in there.
Yeah.
And you managed to get out of there. But
I've gotten out of the typecasting bubble about like 7 times,
Right.
but you jump from one bubble to the next in a sense.
Yeah.
Of where just people have such myopia, they only see
Right.
this thing, and so it's really weird. I started and I was typecast as the quirky indie movie guy that does like strange guitar music. Like, believe it or not, you know, that Six String Samurai, that's Bubba Hotep, that's all the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And then it was like for a little bit of time, it was like the indie drama. And then I got a horror film and another one, and it became, oh, this is horror movies. And even the action film I did, Hunted, was William Friedkin, so people thought Exorcist, and I kind of got
tied into that.
And then I remember for a while, I was like, you know what, and I was doing Constantine, and then you have these anomalies like Greatest Game Ever Played. And then basically at a point I was like, you know, I'd love to do, just really spread my wings and do some action music. And I had to convince, what studio? Is it Sony? I don't even remember. I had to convince a studio to do an action film, and it was like, can you do action music? And now that just sounds like a ridiculous, you know, now it's almost like well, he does action music. Can he do? And then you could just name off one of the previous genres. Even happened on Mummy. I mean, it was like, oh, he's doing, you know, this Marvel music and Fast and Furious and these things. Can he do like, you know, gothic horror film? And I'm thinking, guy, I remember hearing the conversation. Can he do action? Because he can do gothic horror.
Yeah, that was back at the start.
You know, so and even still, like now, there's a little conversation where I'm talking to people, like I'm doing a comedy next. And of course, I used to do comedies all the time. It was like, you know, I did sitcoms. Like I had numerous sitcoms on NBC and CBS and Fox and stuff, and then I did these little indie, you know, comedy movies, and of course that's all forgotten now. It's like so again, it's like, okay, no, it's cool.
Yeah,
I have a sense of humor. It's gonna be fine. Don't panic.
Well, and all these bubbles that you've managed to be in, you've done amazing work in all of them. So
Thank you.
I think that's it. In the end, I think once you've escaped enough bubbles, you've proven your versatility.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is a point where it kind of becomes, and I always admired that. And there are, you know, at a certain point, you look at, you know, Noon Howard and Hans and Tom and Alan and you know, like they're not restricted by any of that stuff, and it's nice to see that that's you know, coming my way now a bit.
So we did mention Frailty and Greatest Game Ever Played, and that was with Bill Paxton, who passed away just recently. And I just wanted to kind of maybe reflect on what was he like working with as a director, and to be, you know, he was one of the greatest actors, but as a director and behind the camera, how was he?
I mean, he thought this as well, and he was right. I think if he ranked his skills, director was top, acting was next to that.
Right.
And he never really had the chance to show this, really, because he was always so busy as an actor. And of course, you know, it's the kind of thing where he would be setting up the next movie, and there was like 3 different projects we were working on in terms of the next collaboration for directing and composing, and they were all super interesting. And so when we did Greatest Game Ever, well, first we did Frailty together,
right?
And for a director to show a range like Frailty into Greatest Game Ever Played, you're talking about a really gothic horror film into a period piece drama about turn of the century immigrants. That's heartfelt and it makes you cry. You know what I mean? And has some, you know, heroic kind of sport kind of things in it. But it's funny, people sometimes see that movie and they're like, oh, is that about golf? And I kind of, it's like, it's like, yes, that's an element to it because it's a true story about this guy, but it's kind of like, it's about golf as like, if you said, hey, I haven't seen that movie Titanic, is that about a boat? Like, no, you know what I mean? Like but anyway, back to his depth. Had this great depth, really smart guy, a student of history and film, and we bonded over Bernard Herrmann, and we bonded over, you know, just all this kind of history of film, and so when we got going, he wanted to do it old school on everything. Yeah. He would say, I'm going to come over, I want you to play me the score on the piano. Mock-ups were not a thing.
Wow.
And I'd sit down and I would play the piano. That piano, as a matter of fact, the piano that's in here,
wow,
that's the piano that I played the themes in. I remember him sitting there and he would know immediately. Yep, you know, and he would be emotional about it too. If something struck him, he would show it, and that's how he did it. So we worked in a really in a way that was much more like, to him, Herman Hitchcock.
Yeah, very much.
You know, and he was not a fan of digital stuff.
Yeah,
not a big digital guy. So it was great, super. And then we became good friends, and we were talking shortly before he passed away unexpectedly. I remember he was going in for a surgery, but he was at the Grand Ole Opry, and he sent me some pictures of Leonard Bernstein, and because he knows I modeled conducting after him, and showed me a picture of his baton, and he just texted me a bunch of stuff, and it was just shocking. And I miss him a lot. You know, I mean, he was really a favorite person of mine.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And just a great artist as well.
Totally. Yes. So this piano was the piano I used on all my scores up till 2005, and interesting, like this literally, like I remember Bill Paxton sitting down it was kind of interesting. Now I have it in here in the house. So if I need to, you know, right, Casey? I play in here and I write a lot of music in here, which is away from my studio, which is cool because it gives me two different spaces, and there's more light in here because I intentionally don't put windows in my studio so I don't know what time it is. You see? So that's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of focusing, kind of going into your process a little bit, kind of in general. I always like to ask composers this question. I don't think I asked you this last time, but where does the first note come from? I know it's going to be different from every film, but from film to film. But where do you look for that first idea to pull out of your head? I mean, is it just looking at finished footage, looking at the first cut, looking at the script? I mean,
yeah, it depends on the project. I usually, almost always though, have at least a first mode of operation, which is theme first.
Right.
So whatever that kind of core theme is, that's the first thing I write. So I sit down at the piano. It's almost every time, invariably, sit down at the piano and write a theme. Now that can be from, like on timeline, being I started the movie at the very end of the process.
Right.
And I was replacing Jerry Goldsmith, and so there, you know, they had a film that was done.
Yeah.
You know, so I had a film and it's like, go, and you just immediately start writing to picture. You dive into the middle of the movie somewhere, or a pivotal scene, you pick that one and then maybe another one and another one, and you write, and you just write for the orchestra, and your hair is on fire and you're upside down. But The Mummy, for instance, I started when we were working on the script, and Alex would send me versions of the screenplay, which actually were quite different. and I worked on it for years. You know.
Well, the first interview we did, you were already working on it. I remember you showed me some samples or demos that you put together. That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, and I probably had already written like a half an hour of music to the screenplay.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm not even sure when this was, but I was writing, and I remember when Tom Cruise was cast. I mean, to give you an idea, you know, and then of course it takes a different direction, and as it goes, and as they shoot, and as you know, and I was writing up to the very last on that, you know.
So if you are lucky to be on board early, do you read the script first and is that your kind of first, like, I want the script?
I always read the script. If I can go on the set, that's great. I've done that a lot. I do that for the Fast and Furious movies. The Mummy, I was on set out there, and I happened to be doing a concert out in London, and they were shooting in London, and then Tom Cruise came to my concert, and he's like, "Why don't you come on set tomorrow?" And so I went out there. It was the scene with the plane. Before they actually shot because they really shot that plane diving to Earth, and they did 64 takes and all that crazy. But the scene right before, where they're in the plane, kind of preparing for I was there. It was really cool, and then I got to see the sarcophagus, and I got to see prodigium and all these different layers, and I remember like physically being in the space, thinking like, whoa, this is giving me even more ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
So on some big budget films, like The Mummy, you were mentioning how the edit can change drastically throughout production. You know, whether they do retakes or reshoots, or maybe they go in different directions.
Right.
So how do you keep this? I guess how do you keep the structure? Because I feel like a score is such a delicate thing where if you change something here, it affects something over here.
Does.
So how do you keep the structure of your score from collapsing if something drastic changes, or if any reshoots happen, or if they tweak the edit at all? I mean,
so, you know. Mummy is a good example, actually, of restructuring while you're on the fly. Because what you need to do is make sure, if you're restructuring something, that it, like a modular fit, it fits. You can take the part out and you can replace it with something, and it still fits with this. So the thing that I've become accustomed to when I go to write something new that's going to fit in with the score as a whole, I automatically, I have in mind what's already there, and I'm not going to do something that doesn't fit. It's just, I won't even think of it. It's like, it's kind of cool because it limits you in a way, but at the same time, sometimes limitations are the best spurn of a creativity. Right. If you can do literally anything, it's too much. You're like, I don't know what to, you know what I mean? It's like, I encounter this when I go to like a restaurant that has the billion-page menu. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, I can. And then you get this weird thing. You're like, well, I'm going to get some sushi and cheese fries and, you know, tortilla and tacos and a burger. And you know what I mean? You're just like, ah. So the fact is, if you have kind of a, like with Mummy, it was Gothic, it was kind of Wagnerian and kind of classic in that way, but also old school, referred to kind of the Polish avant-garde and different things like that. There's this lane. So when I went, and at the last, as I've explained before, I rewrote Nick's theme.
Yeah, you were talking about that at the signing.
Yeah. So which was insane because Nick's theme is Nick is Tom Cruise,
right?
And he's in like every scene,
right?
And so and it was at the the last. I had 2 days before my last recording session at Abbey Road, going to record there, and she helped out, and basically I decided that. And the director and the editor and Tom Cruise and we were like, you know what, this new theme that I wrote on the piano only was like, this is a better Nick theme than the Nick theme we had. That other Nick theme fit the old Nick character. Now we've changed the movie.
Right.
Now that was in, I think, 17 spots in the movie, different 17 cues, not spots, but full cues.
Yeah.
And those ones I had to, over the weekend, go in and write new. And then make sure that it fit now with what came before and what came after. Interestingly enough, it actually took care of some problems too, because some of the movie moved since we'd record, and there were cues that used to be like, here was a piece of music and here was a piece of music, right? And then the movie moved, and all of a sudden it was like half of the middle half of this got moved into the first quarter of this piece, which moved this out, which bumped to this piece, but now this scene is gone, so this one got butted up, and you have all these weird key changes. Yeah. And so what I did is, it happens to be, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to rewrite, I'm going to smooth all this out and make it, and it ended up actually being more like custom for the film than even the original stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you said you're up like all night, right? I remember.
Oh yeah. So it was Friday night that I wrote this theme, and then Monday morning, and this is Friday night Los Angeles time, you know. So it was Monday we had the recording session. So it was just
in Abbey Road,
straight through at Abbey Road.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was bonkers, you know. And people, I mean, I remember also orchestrators on the plane, you know, handing them stuff. I mean, it was like literally we're on the plane and handing stuff. It was nuts.
That's amazing.
She has fully gotten in here.
What's up, Casey?
Hey, Casey. Yes, okay.
So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but you're talking about having a short time span to work on and having unlimited power of no deadlines. Right. But when you're like Timeline, where you're replacing a score and you have to do it quickly, versus something like The Mummy where you have years to work on it, do you automatically kind of switch your brain to a different mode? Like, do you have a protocol for, all right, 2 weeks to go, we got to do this? I mean, or does it just happen instinctively?
Yeah, it just kind of happens. I think, I probably wouldn't push it to 21-hour days if I don't have that imminent thing.
Right.
But sometimes you get inspired, and I can't help it. I end up staying up all night all the time. I mean, I did it last night. I don't have an immediate deadline on a movie like right now, but I did it anyway because I just get into it, No,
I know how that's like if I'm editing something and it's in your head, it doesn't escape your head until it's
you just want to do it. Yeah. And I was doing some stuff, some drumming, and like as you can see, blood blister here. And I was just doing it too much, and I was working with Kill the Noise on a new track, and we just got into it, and so it doesn't really. The fact that I do these crazy hours is part of the love, but sometimes when you have back-to-back movies or something like that, and you do it for too long, like 7, 8, 9 months straight of 7 days a week, minimum 18-hour days, then it starts to kind of like, it's just physically, it becomes difficult. Something starts breaking down, and I did, and after I finished The Mummy, which was back to back with a bunch of movies, I did a different thing. I went out and did, I did the conducted and the concerts and stuff like that, and went to Europe, and then kind of chilled, and that was cool. I got out of the studio at least.
Right. Do you set time for yourself to have a break in your schedule throughout the year? Or do you like, I need to take a month off, or I need to take to refresh?
No, it's just whenever it lands. You do it till the movie, because movie schedules change all the time.
Right.
I mean, I was doing the Power Rangers movie kind of with Fast and Furious starting and then Triple X ending, but Power Rangers was supposed to be way before any of those. I remember like a year before.
Yeah.
So it moved and it landed. And then there are certain other ones. It was frustrating because there was certain other things. There were a couple really great, very big movies that I really loved that I was going to score.
Right.
But then ones that I'd already committed to moved into that place, and then it blocks you from being able to do these other ones. Or sometimes you can't do a sequel of a movie that you've already even done the last one. You can't. And that's frustrating too, because you want your legacy to be musically carried on and their continuity, like things like that. Just those are the frustrating parts about it. You can't do anything about it, but you can't do everything. And I see some people do that. They kind of you see like more of a stacking. I try to really kind of make it so at least it's humanly possible for me to write everything.
Exactly. So what's the shortest amount of time you've ever had to work on a film?
5 days.
5 days from start to finish?
Yeah, I think it was 5 working days, and then we got into mixing and dubbing, and I know there was 8 days on Fourth Floor, I think, and then it was 5 on break.
Wow.
Which was bonkers. And that one was also me playing all the instruments, so it actually made it harder in some ways. I didn't have to. Fortunately, when I do all the instruments, I don't write anything down, so at least I can go right into it, and I don't have to worry about scribbling stuff out for someone and kind of going, no, play it this way, So, and weirdly enough, those are 2 of I think my most creative scores.
Yeah, I love break.
So anyway, so it shows you never know.
And what's the longest? Like I mean, The Mummy, you said...
Mummy's got to be the longest.
Yeah.
I think, unless you count that I didn't know that I was writing Children of Dune music when I was a little kid, when I read the books, you know.
Right.
So that, you know, what do you think, Casey? She's been around for a lot of this, yeah. She came on board during, I believe it was right before Constantine.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember her hanging out with like Richard Donner and stuff when they come over. So I know at least she's been around that long. You've seen some stuff, Casey. She's been doing it. She's seen a lot.
She's seen a lot.
She has secrets.
If those kids, that could talk.
Yeah, for sure.
So I do want to talk a little bit about psychology in music. I know you implement kind of music psychology in the way you approach things. And you got your degree at Harvard. Was it in psychology or philosophy?
Yeah, no, exactly. I didn't. Not psychology, but I love psychology.
Yeah, but it was philosophy.
Yeah,
right,
philosophy, history. Yeah.
But I think composers, naturally, you have to be a psychologist because you're interpreting emotions, you're analyzing characters. And I remember we discussed something about Iron Man 3 where you were doing certain techniques. I mean, what kind of I guess things do you implement in your writing that would kind of fall in that category of music psychology?
Yeah, it's like psychology, psychoacoustics. It's an interesting field. It's a mysterious field, but certainly there are all sorts of kind of tricks of the brain that can be utilized to kind of bring about both emotion and narrative. Which really are the two things that music tends to do in film, is that you want to bring out the emotion and what is the person feeling, and what is the viewer supposed to feel? What is the intended emotion from the director for the viewer? Then also I find is something that's underappreciated is the ability of music to frame narrative in a way that clarifies story points. And that's where kind of you're talking about Iron Man 3 as an example, where, and actually any film that's thematic, is that you use themes to clarify story points by not just using themes when you see the character, here comes their theme, there's the leitmotif basic idea. You change that up, so you use parts of their themes at certain times when they're not on screen to clarify even subconscious things like a motivation of a character to do something. That character may be doing something because of another character. I tend to use the other person's theme there. So I'm not using the person that's actually in the scene's theme. I'm using something else because that's the motivating factor for this story point. And I find that it subconsciously clarifies narrative a lot and can kind of clean up the way someone thinks about a story in a way that hopefully reflects what the director wanted in the first place.
Right. But you did get your degree in philosophy, yes?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a completely different field. Was you getting a master's at Harvard? How do you implement that into your life today and what you do and everything?
Yeah. Well, in fact, it was. It started in undergrad when I did history, and so it's like history and philosophy and all these elements, how people learn, education, all those things. There's things I studied, and I find that those are natural things that I would pursue out of curiosity, but I think that there's a practical application for all of that. Seeing how the way people arrive at their own truths or the way that they manage situations, those things actually apply to the dramatic. And story is so good storytelling is so connected to metaphor and to kind of when someone says, gosh, well, what did I get out of this movie? What was the moral of the story? Or not so much moral being ethics, more what is the through line? What is the drive? What are we trying to say here? We want to say something with the story. You want to say something with the music. and it's sometimes a bit esoteric and abstract, but at the same time, these things matter, and they're the reason why when you hear Threnody for Hiroshima, the Penderecki piece, you immediately get it. You're like, wow, I can hear that in this music. Yeah. Why, when you hear Schindler's List theme with Itzhak Perlman playing it with the John Williams score, it's like, you get it. You get, okay, there's this, the philosophy behind what made folk music sound that way in that tradition means something to us. So we want to preserve that, and so in a way it really has this ripple effect, this domino effect that goes all the way down and gets to us at our core with with music and how we interpret it.
Well, I love that explanation and everything, because for me growing up, storytelling, not just film music, but I'm not a musician. I went to film school and everything, but it made sense to me because it was the only thing that made sense to me, because it was kind of this examination of the human condition. And I found that was the best way to look at the way we live, the way we interact with each other. There's so many different amazing fields out there, but for just, I don't know, there's just something about storytelling.
It is, and to me, I can never separate, and people shouldn't, as artists, separate themselves from their art and who they are, and kind of your point of view. I'm a secular humanist, right? So invariably, I kind of have this, this look at the world that's like, okay, well, we have this one life to live. We want to make sure that you express it in a way. So I tend to be kind of very emotional about things that maybe others wouldn't. Like, for instance, I get emotional looking through a telescope, like images from the Hubble telescope. It makes me, and that's part of just kind of my angle. That's where I come from, and science makes me emotional, and this search for truth and all these things. So
answers.
Exactly, and I tend to feel a little bit like that existential crisis too, where I feel very tiny. And so when I'm listening to Sigur Rós and I'm feeling tiny, that's you do feel the sense of the transcendence without it being religious. For me, that they're two different things. But I definitely, you listen to my music, that is all in there, and I don't think I could even extract it if I wanted to.
Right. So it was a little tangent, but it was super interesting. So back to movie making. So you've been part of a lot of amazing scores for these kind of franchises and cinematic universes. You just started a new one with The Mummy that's going to be a dark kind of universe with the Universal monsters, and Marvel and everything. But I'm just interested in, if you can speak freely about it, if you think these cinematic universes, are they a result of Marvel's success financially, and that's why people are doing it, or do you think audiences really gravitate towards that? I
think there's a little of both. I think the audience drives the market for the success to be that Marvel opened up a window to other studios saying, oh, we can invest a lot into this other thing. That's something that otherwise they wouldn't make because it'd be too expensive. Right. But they see the model has worked for Marvel. Right. And so Warner Brothers and Sony and Fox and Lionsgate and of course Universal with their properties, they're like, you know what? We've been wanting to do this, but it was maybe cost prohibitive. Maybe we can do what we artistically wanted to do in the first place, but we thought was maybe too expensive. Maybe we can, and you take a swing for it. Anytime you make a movie, you are and try to open up something like a new universe of characters. It's always a risk, and you never know how people are going to react, but you just go with what your gut is. And I know these studio executives, most of the studio executives I know are movie fans, like they didn't just kind of accidentally get in the movie, they actually, I think they get, like in a way, a bad rap for being execs, but at the same time, like to me, I'm looking at them going, thinking, okay, it is so hard to make a film and make it successful and critically praised and all these things all in a row, but at no time have I sensed that kind of some kind of, oh gosh, how should I call it? Personally, I haven't encountered that kind of disrespect for the movie process themselves, where it just becomes, how can we make a buck? Like, that is not something that, if you really are in the trenches with these people on the dub stage and in editorial, I've never heard one, like, working so closely like Kevin Feige, for instance, on these Marvel movies. It's always, how can we make this movie better? Oh, as a fan, I remember this character as a kid when I was reading the comic. Can we bring that character out a little bit more? Does the story make sense here? Is it more dramatic to have this? Is it more? I've never heard them go, if we have this scene here, we're going to make more money in this country, and then we're going to, like, I think there's a suspicion by, like, the public, like, looking in, that this is how it operates. And to me, at least in my experience, it's nice to see that they're truly, like, trying to make as good as a movie as you can.
Right. And I mean, nobody's trying to make shit work. I don't think nobody's trying to do, like, a bad job. I think everyone...
No one's trying to do a bad job, and it's also, and beyond just not trying to do a bad job, of course they want to do a good job, because that'll, sell tickets. But I don't think it's done, from at least what I've worked on, and I haven't seen that kind of doing an ass backwards thing where they're like, okay, how can we make a bunch of money? Let's do it this way. Even the movies that are, like, extremely commercial, that is not the discussion. I mean, look at Fast and Furious. It does incredibly well. It's insane, right? But if you look at it, they didn't need to make Fast and Furious 3. Universal could have walked away from it, and it's like, Justin Lin and the gang were, like, excited about doing something in Tokyo, and, maybe people will like it. Maybe it'll kind of spurn something on. Some people loved it, some people didn't, but it was done, like, they knew full well this movie, who knows if people are going to check it out. But the fact is that it built upon that movie, and it became this big success, and it's now about family and all these things, and they kind of took a different turn. That was someone at the studio going, okay, we believe in your enthusiasm, know.
So how do you react when you do put your heart into something like The Mummy? And The Mummy did get kind of bashed critically. I mean, how do you react to negative criticism like that? Do you look at it, do you go, no, maybe they have a point, or do you just kind of not let it affect your thought process?
It's everything. You look at things, I think, as you're doing a movie, you see, it so well, you see, okay, here's our strengths and here's our weaknesses. Let's try to help the weaknesses, and so, but I think that in terms of the critics and kind of like a general, like, message boardy kind of bandwagon thing, it's so easy to go one way or the other, like, on stuff that's actually pretty close, and you look back in history. When I go back and I look at movies and I look at how they were received at the time, and now I watch it and I'm like, that's actually cool. I mean, you look at Blade Runner, that got trashed. And then finally, like, I mean, watch the Siskel and Ebert review of some of these. I mean, it's incredible. Like, you're like, how did you not know? How did you not know? That's insane. But at the same time, when you release it, you're realistic about, okay, here's an area where we all wish we could have done this. But at the same time, you put your heart and soul into it, and you put your best foot forward. And like on The Mummy, I love doing that movie, and I love it. And there is a bit of mystery when I go, okay, I see some of the things they're saying here and there, but this is, it's not even like sour grapes. It's just like, you read some of the stuff and it's bandwagony, trying to be cool. It's like,
I think we live in a time also where certain headlines get clicks, and clicks get money.
It's fun, like, and maybe someone has something like against Tom Cruise or whatever, and so they're gonna, or they don't like the fact that they love the original Mummy. Why are we doing another one? Whatever it is, And I'm looking at it going, Tom's great in it, and a guy that I have mad respect for now that I've worked with him, and all these things. It's a very difficult thing to pull off. Any movie that even gets out to the theaters is a small miracle. from it to like for the person that was like, I have an idea, to in the theater,
Yeah.
like anyone that's a hater, go try to do it.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult.
Right.
I'm lucky enough to like jump on the train as it's going and like be like, I'm going to do some music. But for the people that like really get a movie off the ground and rolling and get it into the theater and for it to make sense and kind of hold together is crazy.
Yeah.
It's way harder than it looks.
For sure. And coming back a little bit to your processes a bit. Some of the these movies that you score, and we talked about it last time, but you ended up scoring a lot of movies with ensemble casts. And
Yeah.
Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers and even the Fast Furious movies and Avengers.
Sure.
And you've created these awesome themes for these movies. And I'm always curious. I forget if I even asked you this. I don't think I did. Is where does that theme come from? If you don't have,
I know.
So
the
you have
ensemble
like 5 characters. What is dictating the tone? I mean,
This is something that really came apparent to me when I was doing the Expendables series.
Oh yeah, I
because
forgot. Yeah, Expendables too.
It's like starring like the above the line main stars. There's like 72 of them,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so what I found was and as I was doing that, that's when Fast started to kind of like come back with the original ensemble and added more characters.
Yeah.
And what I did is I had to get out of the mindset of I need to score every character's theme, and you just can't. So, for instance, I'll take Fast and Furious as an example. You want to have themes and vibes for the different characters. Roman, which is Tyrese's character, and Luda, they have this like theme that's now been established in the last few movies that you hear throughout. You have with Paul Walker's character Brian and Mia's theme is kind of a romantic theme, and then you have a Letty and Dom theme that's a little sadder. Dom has a stoic theme. Okay, so now you're getting into quite a few themes. Then you have individually the villains. They have to have a theme that's new for each film.
Right.
So there's your kind of basis. Now, whether or not people track all of those totally, maybe they don't, maybe they do. I'm amazed as many people do because I get emails and things in it. But I needed a unifying theme, the like team theme.
Yeah, team theme.
Right, team theme. And so for Expendables and Fast and Furious and Power Rangers and Avengers and all these films, I needed to find a central theme that would kind of tell the story for all of them.
Yeah.
And it's usually going to be a they are kicking ass theme.
Yeah.
So it's usually a positive theme.
Is it as simple as just being a heroic theme?
Kind of, yeah, but it has to capture what they're about. So
Right.
like Power Rangers actually has since they're striving to be Power Rangers, they haven't made it yet really. So it's like it's an aspirational theme. It's like it's actually minor, but it kind of lifts at the end of the melody, and so it kind of has this longing feel. It's like it's more like #feels.
Yeah.
It's like what you hear when you hear M83 and stuff like that, and you kind of, but at the same time, it's in the structure of a score. Things like Turtles, straight up comic fun. It's like it's a march. It's in 12/8. It's raucous and and so and then of course Fast and Furious, which is much more of like almost like a rock theme. Even though it's orchestral.
Right.
So yeah, depends.
So kind of looking at your career where you are now, do you set, sometimes people ask yourself, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't think that applies to a composer in this position, but in your position, but do you set personal goals for yourself? I mean, are you, I'm at this point in my career, I still want to accomplish this. I mean. Yeah,
I the kind of the goals are that you kind of try to work at working hard, basically,
right,
and trying to expand your palette. I love doing dramas. I want one to really catch the ears and eyes of the world, like Truth, for instance, in these movies that I've done. Yeah. And you want those ones to really catch on more. But I love dramas, so that's something that I like to do. For instance, also this year, I was just like, I want to do a comedy.
Yeah.
I want to do a comedy. So I'm doing a comedy. And it's hilarious and it's going to be great. And so, these are the things that you make goals. It's not so much like a goal like I want to win an Academy. It's not that kind of thing for me.
Yeah.
It's more about the music, and the other stuff kind of comes. I never even thought I want to do well at the box office. You know, great. You know, I'm shocked. You know, you see that running list. There's a list. I don't even know this. There's like box office. It's like the numbers.com, and they have this list of all-time box office. And I think of myself as like, I'm just starting, and I see right now I'm like 9th all-time of composers, and I'm thinking, wait, what? How did that happen? I was just doing this independent film, and now I'm trying to do this other stuff. And so you see this like kind of weird thing happen, and you realize, okay, I can't focus on like accolades or success or box office or anything like that. You just need to go where the music takes you, and that's why I'm doing things that like Mad Sonic, that's just a total separate project that I'm doing as a creative outlet. And I find that success, either if it's critically or financially or whatever, the second you start focusing on that is probably the second that it's all going to vanish. So I don't think about it, and I let my managers worry about that stuff.
Stylistically, are you still, or aesthetically, stylistically, are you still growing? Are you evolving? I mean, are you
always?
Do you like wake up in the morning and go, I want to change the way my sound is?
I'm always. The thing I'm always doing is just working on basic theory. Basically theory, I should say. Like as I get more interested in music theory that's way out on the outer edge, scales that are really new, and you don't want to get into the vibe where I know how to do this and this is under my fingertips because it's easy. So, you know, going and studying other composers from the history of composition, classical, avant-garde, jazz, all these things, you find yourself in different modes. I would not have done that naturally, but now it's going to be part of my arsenal. Just so in terms of growing, it's really challenging myself to learn music that I am not as familiar with. And for me, that's why I like, you know, subdividing electronic music into, you know, 32 subgenres. I want to know all of those. I want to know how to program, you know, drum and bass versus dubstep versus trap. Why are they different? Do you do side chains on the sub, and can you go below this key and use it? All this stuff okay, and then you go and you're talking about classical music, orchestration of Bartók, and how does that, you know, how does Bartók, you know, relate to something that's completely in a different milieu? You know, you're like, why does Rachmaninoff sound like this and Bartók sounds like, oh, well, I get it, so Bartók relates to this. And then you get into Steve Reich, and then you get into John Cage and Crumb and all this, you know, and pretty soon you're just loving music and not being, there's not as many like borders to how you write. You will write outside the box more. Your box of your knowledge is this, and you're going to write here. So what you want to do is expand your knowledge so you can write here, and then you just keep going. And so
keep moving the wall back.
That's the way I keep going.
I've enjoyed listening to you throughout your career, and it's been amazing following you. And I want to thank you again for your time tonight.
Of course.
And it was so great to
thanks for coming by,
digging into stuff again, and we'll do it again.
Sounds good. All right. What do you think, Casey?
Casey, was it a good interview?
Yeah. You should check out.